And now, a native podcast with Matt and Zach.
And welcome back to another episode of A Native Podcast. I am Zach, and with me, as always, is Matt. And I gotta start it off that way, as always, and say, Matt, buddy, how we doing today?
Today is a good day, my man. No rain out here today.
Oh, it was beautiful weather today. We walked the hazelnut fields today, and we're looking. Well, we had those four barn cats, and we opened up the cat doors, and we have not seen the barn cats since.
Oh,
So either they ran away or the predators
oh
got them.
wow.
So
Wow.
I don't know. That's where we're at.
Should we give our listeners like a tour of where we live, like one episode?
One episode, cribs,
Like
cribs, a native
like
podcast, cribs.
native pottery in my collections I have over there.
Maybe one day if they ask for it, they got to comment below on this and say that they're listening.
They have to be wanting that probably.
They got to ask.
Yeah.
I know some of your lady friends might want that, but
Well, I'm just those barn cats, man. You start giving them names, and then people start, how's Benny doing or what? I don't know.
well, the barn cat, they haven't. We said they were going to earn their names. You know what I mean? You got to let them live for like 6 months or
Oh,
a
okay.
year or so. They got to earn their names.
They got to make their first kills like
Yeah.
traditional native culture.
They got to go out, survive. You're like, okay, yeah, that one's Thumper because he's always thumping the birds after he kills them. You know what I mean? Just whap, 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 just whapping them. No, no, no. But I do have an announcement. I mean, you know about this
Oh,
already, but the listeners might not know about this because we talked about it on the last episode. We talked about my Buffalo job and how I was helping there and doing that. Well, I don't have that job anymore. And the only good reason we could come up with is that the president of Fort Peck Community College is my ex-father-in-law,
oh no.
and he's done with me. So it's kind of fucked how Indian country works that way. I mean, that's something unique to Indian country, kind of the tribal sovereignty, how they own their colleges, they can kind of make their own rules and get away with them. But that's how, I mean, that's nepotism in it. That's why, like, he'll use a grant, for example, right? Like he'll use grant money to say, "Hey, we don't have enough houses up here in Fort Peck. No one wants to move up here or live up here to work in the schools." You know what I mean? And so we need a grant to build some houses so we can recruit teachers, so we can have more teachers and
Oh wow.
staff for the college and so they have places to live, right? So that's what the grant proposal looks like when you submit for those type of things, right? On the reservation, you're like, hey, we need this. That's the need. That's the problem. That's why the grant money exists in the first place. Who does he give the housing to? Breyer, his son.
Oh my goodness.
So you know what I mean? That's nepotism in its finest. Like there's shit like that happens at these tribal colleges and at these in tribes too. I mean,
Oh
it
yeah.
happens. I'm sure everyone on this that's listening is like, oh fuck, that's what this is happening at Quinault, or this is what's happening at
Yeah.
Comanche, or this is what's happening at
Right.
wherever. I mean, we see it, we live it, we breathe it, and the moment he's not benefiting from it, in my opinion, I was married to his daughter, so in my
Mhm.
opinion, that's the only way I got the job in the first place. Not because of my talent, not because of my resume, not because I was qualified, because I
He
was,
knew you could do the job, and it was someone they needed somebody, right?
yeah, that's what it was. But you know what I mean? Like to avoid those processes and not go through the direct processes
Right. Right. The
is
hiring
kind of
process.
interesting. Yeah, it's interesting
Yeah.
how they do it. It makes me feel less valued as a person in the sense that it's like,
Yeah.
well, did I not get this job because of my merit and who I am? Because
Right.
oh, now I'm divorced from your daughter. We got divorced in November, so November to December, December to
Mhm.
January, January, February. 3 months go by. That's like the bare minimum time if you think about it of like making it not look like, oh, like if you would have fired me in November, everyone would have been like, oh yeah, that makes sense. But
Right.
like 3 months, it's like, oh, I'm not doing that bullshit. And they say it was in violation of my contract, which it wasn't. So
Wow.
yeah,
That's
it's
that's
it's
some
fucked.
Indian country drama.
Yeah, for the
Even
listeners, it's out there, public now.
even the outsider reservations, like you hear about it on college campuses with like Native Student Services and like Lane College in Oregon had some drama, and I don't know all the details there, but
Well, I think that's why you get a lot of Native Americans, you hear the question or you hear them talk about like, I don't want to work for my tribe
yes,
because of that bullshit, and
yeah.
that wasn't my tribe, but it
No,
was
but you
my
were married in.
family at that time. Yes, yes. But
So
yeah, good.
in
We're
that
doing
way you're
we're
kind of
doing hazelnuts now. No, I was kidding.
yeah. In that way you're now kind of part of them. You were kind of part of them
Yes.
for a little bit, right? In that
Yeah.
everyone knew you or people knew you in the community, right? You're part of it for a bit.
No, and that's what, you're building that, you live there, and it's good and it's fine. I'm mad. Don't get me wrong. It's disrespectful to do that. And if that's how they want to do it, it's
Well,
what it
it's
is. I
like
mean,
when you date or marry a woman, like or like I did with a Mexican, dated a Mexican girl. You they joke is you date her whole family too,
yeah,
because it's like that communal aspect of minority groups in the United States, right? And
right.
yeah, you treat her wrong. You got like uncles who just got out of jail coming after your ass,
No, it's crazy.
which I didn't. I didn't have that because I treated her good. But
No, no, I totally get what you're saying. And that's fine. I mean, that's not what we're here to talk about. It's just giving you an update that I'm no longer doing the Buffalo job. Uh, it was crazy too because I was like in the middle, like I was editing the last podcast, and I was like, okay, I have some footage from the Buffalo, and like I started putting together a thing, and then I found a paper that had their like one sheet, like their information of like, oh, this is how many Buffalo the Fort Peck tribes have. Like I was going to make a little video for them to use and promote the grant and everything, but it's all under their water now. Um, and we're fine with that because that's not what we're here to talk about today. Today is the day you and I are talking about the Comanche Nation of Oklahoma. And they traditionally weren't in Oklahoma. I mean, they were in that area, but they're
part
more
of it.
more of a Texas area tribe.
More very heavy, like most of their area was that northern northwest part of central even Texas a little bit.
Yeah.
Uh, and then we'll get into maps and stuff, but they went into other what are now states, areas.
No.
But
And Mexico,
yeah, well, yeah, they raided down there.
which is interesting because it makes you think when that's happening, like the rating, and I know we'll probably talk about that a little bit later on, but something like that's occurring, why is it occurring? Is that why, was that how oppressed the indigenous of Mexico were? You know what I mean? That the Spanish had oppressed them that much, and then the Mexican Revolution oppressed them that much, and then like the natives from the North, America really put them in that to where they were being raided.
Yeah.
It's crazy. It's crazy to look at how that kind of history unfolds. Um, and that like how borders do borders, because I think what's interesting about the Comanche Nation in Oklahoma or Texas, well, I say Oklahoma, but they're in Texas,
Well, yeah.
is we were talking about it before, is the Six Flags, why, I'm saying you Six Flags is named Six Flags because of the Six Flags that flew over Texas.
Right.
And we said, you have the Texas state flag, Texas. It was its own country. It was, America, USA. That's what it is today. It was Mexico.
Yeah.
It was Spain. It
Yeah.
was France at one point too.
Hmm.
Um, which one am I missing? Mexico, Spain, France,
Well, and I
Texas,
mean, then Comanche and all the
USA.
indigenous
Oh,
claims.
indigenous. No, what was the sixth
Yeah.
one? There was a sixth one.
Was there Spain, France,
Spain, France,
Mexico,
USA, Mexico,
Texas?
Texas.
Yeah. I don't know.
Maybe they count the Six Flags. Maybe they count the Six Flag.
Yeah. 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 It might have been like Germans or I don't know, German. There might have been
Oh, you know what it is? What they counted as
what is that?
when it was the South,
Oh,
the Confederated States of
because it
America.
for a short time it was yeah.
it was part of, for 4 years, it was the Confederacy. So the
Mhm.
Confederate States of America, United States of America. So that's why they call it the Six
Right,
Flags
right.
Texas.
Wow.
Use the internet. No
Yeah.
better next time. No, but that's that's what it is.
Right.
Interesting.
Yeah.
But
Did you want me to, I mean, that was a good fun fact there, bud, taking my fun fact, but
no, you can tell your fun fact here to get us
no, that
started.
that was, I didn't even know that. I had no idea Six Flags came from there.
That's
That's
why. And
pretty
that's why it's
cool.
named that.
The one I had was you hear like there's that book or that movie too, Comanche Moon.
Yep.
So what does that refer to? And people are like, what does that mean? So what it was they were famous for doing raids under full moons. And so
Oh,
people
light.
called it Comanche moons, their raid because you can see better under a clear night and a full moon, right?
Right.
And so it kind of guided them in their raids, natural lighting.
Thing.
So
Maybe it's being smart. Very
it's
smart tactic right there.
it's being smart.
That
Yeah.
is really cool. And that makes sense, like they were always under pressure. So they're having to do these raids and do whatever, if you think about six different nations pushing on you as native people, moving you to where
Right.
you need to be. I mean, that's why ultimately there's not a lot of tribes in Texas.
No,
There's a lot of land, not a lot of natives.
no.
Like it's interesting to think of that.
Did you know there's a new native apparel company?
No, I did not.
It's called Shop LS 574, named after the 574 federal tribes and the Little Shell descendancy of its founders.
Wow, that's really cool, man.
It is. It is becoming a spot to order native apparel by and for natives, working with native designers and teams to help best represent Indian country.
That's awesome, dude.
For sure. Now make sure to go pick up some Native podcast swag as well as other native gear while shopping at shopls574.com.
Oh, yeah. And do not forget to use code ANP10 to save on your next order.
That's ANP10. Hey Matt, did you know there's a tribally owned net company?
No, I did not.
Not only are they tribally owned, but Blue Ribbon Nets also creates totally sustainable products. With Blue Ribbon Nets, not only are you getting quality nets, but even eco-friendly ones as well.
That's awesome, dude.
It sure is indeed. Make sure to use code RUGAROO10 on your next Blue Ribbon Net order to save. Again, the code is RUGAROO10, RUGARU10.
I am definitely getting a blue ribbon net now.
Tune in every Tuesday to hear your favorite native podcast.
That's right. A Native Podcast has new episodes every week, ranging from boarding schools to Indian child welfare.
Not only that, but we have Indian country covered from Maine to California and Florida to Alaska, Hopi to Blackfeet and Choctaw to Tlingit, and all those Crees in between.
And all you other natives and non-natives out there, we want to remind you to tune in this Tuesday to A Native Podcast.
What we always do, I think we get into the tribal net pages, right? ComancheNation.com. You can go see, you can learn about them. Our nation, they have their constitution, they have history, they have an interactive map, they have veterans page, they have all their laws, they have their annual reports, they have their employment opportunities, they have all their tribal enterprises. And I like to start it off with the history because it's always best to get the history of the people by the people. And this is the history of the Comanche Nation according to their webpage. Considered one of the great tribes of the American Southwest, the Comanche Nation, and in our native language, Munu, which means the people, are known as Lords of the Plains. They were once a part of the Shoshone tribe in the late 1600s and 1700s. We moved from our Shoshone kinsmen onto the northern plains, then southernly in search of a new homeland. We migrated across the plains through Wyoming, Nebraska, Colorado, Kansas, New Mexico, Texas, and Oklahoma. We ultimately settled here in the southwest Oklahoma. The horse was a critical element in the Comanche culture. The people mastered their skills on horseback and gained tremendous advantage in times of war. They fought battles on horseback, a skill unknown among other Indian peoples of that time. They were highly skilled at breeding and trading horses, which became an essential resource of for the people that radically changed life on the plains. Comanche horsemen set the pattern of nomadic equestrian life that became a characteristic of the plains relationship, or the plains tribes in the 18th and 19th centuries. Bands of Comanche were formed based on kinship and other social relationships. The buffalo was also an essential resource for the people. It provided food, clothing, teepee covering, and other economical goods. The Constitution of the Comanche Nation governs the Comanche Nation. The Tribal Council compromises all enrolled members over 18 and is the main governing body. 7 elected officials voted into by the Tribal Council fill the positions of chairman, vice chairman, secretary, treasurer, and the 4 committee man seats, collectively called the Comanche Business Committee, CBC. The Tribal Council also elects the tribal administrator, who is responsible for the day-to-day operations of the tribal government. The Comanche Business Committee's primary job is to carry out the mission of the Constitution of the Comanche Nation. The mission of the Comanche Nation is to define, establish, and safeguard the rights, powers, and privileges of the tribe and its members to improve the economical, moral, educational, and health status of its members, and to cooperate with and seek the assistance of the United States in carrying out multiple or mutual programs to accomplish these purposes by all possible means and to promote in other ways the common well-being of the tribe and its membership. All while working to improve economic status and protect and manage the nation's natural resources and cultural heritage. The Comanche Nation's main headquarters is 9 miles north of Lawton, Oklahoma. The Comanche tribe currently has approximately 17,000 enrolled tribal members, with around 7,000 residing in the tribal jurisdictional area around Lawton, Fort Sill, and surrounding counties. That's
Yeah, when we get to the thanks for bringing up the enrollment. I mean, 17,000, they're like Blackfeet Nation, but Southern Plains, they're big.
right. No,
They're
they're big.
the actor, the native actor, people might recognize his name is Gil Birmingham. He
Okay.
was the native guy who played the casino owner in the Yellowstone series. He is a Comanche Nation member.
Oh,
Also was the dad of Jacob in the Twilight series, the guy in the wheelchair, native guy. That's Gil Birmingham. Big,
oh,
tall.
there you go.
Bald. Yeah, he's a Comanche Nation member, very involved. Uh, Also, the movie Apocalypto, the main guy that played Jaguar Paw is a Comanche Nation and very involved in the community.
Interesting.
So yeah, he might be, I think he's mixed Mexican, but he's enrolled Comanche. And there's a lot of like our friend Toos is actually a little bit Mexican too, because there's a lot of the raids and shit. I mean, come on, there's going to be some mixing going on there with the groups, you know.
Oh, very much so. Very much so. Did you have any other more? I know you had some numbers. Did you have any other numbers that you wanted to go over?
Number, yeah, you had the, oh, so it says here 7,000 of the enrolled members live within the Lawton, Fort Sill, and surrounding
Right.
counties. So, like, almost half, I guess, of the tribal members live in that area.
Right.
They have a 1/8 blood quantum requirement, which is the same as Oglala, Oglala Sioux.
I think a lot of tribes are 1/8 nowadays, but it makes sense.
It used to be like the majority were like a quarter, I feel, and then a lot of them, like Klamath in Oregon, dropped to an eighth.
Every generation seems to drop it a generation.
Yeah, yep. And then I had just a one-liner here. It said the Texan and Mexican independence severely hurt the Comanche trade
Oh,
because you think about it, they claimed those territories, so then they're not going to trade through there, right?
no,
More
exactly.
warfare and yeah.
No, that makes a ton of sense because exactly what you're saying, where earlier we were talking about like the 6 nations. That's every nation has their governmental policies. You
Hmm.
know what I mean? Mexico didn't have reservations. So
Right.
when Mexico's in charge of Texas, when Texas is in charge of Texas, when the South is in charge of Texas, right? What are they doing to the native people? How are those governments trying to
Mhm.
govern the native people, right? People forget about that stuff in history, you know?
Right.
Even when it comes to like territories and states, there's a reason Puerto Rico and the American Philippines and all those are, American Samoa, all those
Yeah.
territories are still territories and not states.
Right.
They only become states when the US wants to give them representation or give them more money. You know what I mean? But while
Right.
they're a territory, it's just like, nah, you do your own thing. We'll keep over you. We get to put our military there, you know?
It's yeah, it in a way, if you look at like Puerto Rico, let's use that as an example, there are some similarities overarching to tribes in some way. It's very different too, but in that way, it's like, oh, hurricane hits you, we're not going to give you that much assistance for cleanup.
But Texas and Florida will get it.
You're right.
Right. So that's another reason, maybe we don't have the funding and they don't want to, they're not going to get that tax kind of money from a Puerto Rico. So
So,
there's got to be a lot of other reasons. I'm not an expert in that field, and that's not what we're here to talk about. We will get into I have the Oklahoma history, okhistory.org. They
okay.
have the Encyclopedia of Oklahoma History and Culture, and the Comanche Nation of Oklahoma is headquartered in Lawton. The name Comanche is probably from a Southern Ute word meaning enemy or more generally stranger or other. The Comanche called themselves Numunu and spoke a language related to that of the Shoshone of Wyoming and Idaho, an oral tradition ascribed to split the dispute between two camps that was settled by one group moving to the south to become the Comanche, while the other moved west to become the Shoshone. Of possible equal importance in the Comanches' move to the south was the desire to gain access to the Spaniards of New Mexico and Texas. Comanches were reported in northeastern New Mexico in the early 1700s, and although the majority that lived there and in Texas, they utilized various parts of Oklahoma. Historically, the eastern Cotisokas, buffalo eaters, and some of whom were later called Tenewa downstream, was more important. Comanche division in Oklahoma before the reservation, although Yampicara root eaters were frequent visitors to the northern Canadian Valley in the Panhandle. By the 1780s, villages of the Comanches or Orientals, it's like Orientales,
Mhm.
uh, Eastern Comanches, were along the Red River and the Wichita Mountains. The Pentecas, the honey eaters, historically ranged from the south to central Texas. The Kawada, the Kwahidi antelope, resided in the high plains of the Llano Estacado. In 1834, Dodge Leavenworth expedition visited a Comanche village in the Wichita Mountains. And in 1835, the treaty camp Holmes was signed by probably Tinawa Comanches. Comanches frequently visited the Camp Holmes trading post of Augustine P. Chateau and Chateau's post at Fort Gibson. In the late 1830s, armed with firearms supplied by the Chateau's family and Comanche and their Kiowa allies fought several battles along the North Canadian River in the Oklahoma Panhandle against encroaching southern Arapahoes and Cheyennes. Comanches sometimes visited the Salt Fork of the Arkansas in northern Oklahoma. Members of other Indian nations in the Indian Territory often visited Comanche villages to trade for horses. In 1858, a Pennateca Comanche encampment was attacked by U.S. Army forces under Earl Von Dorn during the Battle of Wichita Village, near present Rush Springs. In the late 1850s, the Pennateca were forced out onto the reservation and into Texas. They were reestablished at Fort Cobb on the Washita River. Although there was no official reservation for them, the Treaty of the Little Arkansas in 1865 established a reservation, including much of western Oklahoma and the Texas Panhandle. The 1867 Treaty of Medicine Lodge Creek reduced this to a reservation totally within the boundaries of Oklahoma. It was not until 1875, with the arrival of the Kawanda Comanches under Kawana Parker, that most of the Comanches inhabited the reservation. Initial Comanche settlement on the reservation was centered on Fort Sill, with a secondary center at Andaraco. Soon, groups spread out along East and West Cache Creeks and their tributaries along the Washita and Little Washita rivers. There is no evidence that the preservation local bands and regional divisions retained any coherence in the post-reservation settlement plan. After protests which reached the U.S. Supreme Court in the infamous Lone Wolf v. Hitchcock 1903 decision, the Kiowa Comanche Apache Reservation was allotted to individuals in 160-acre parcels in 1901, except for the several parcels set aside as wood reserves and pastures. The remainder was declared surplus and open-ended for settlement. Those reserved pastures were allotted in 1906. The English terminology utilized to describe Comanche social structure is vague and often confused with the term band, used to refer to several different levels of organization. The principal unit of the Comanche domestic economic production and the consumption was the extended family. Living in several adjacent teepees, groups related extended families or that regularly lived and traveled together are best characterized as local bands or villages. They recognize the head of the core family as the group's headman or paravio. At regional levels, there were divisions, groups of bands that shared common political interests. The divisional leader was selected, some reports say elected, from among the constituent local band headmen. There was a freedom of movement between all of these units, and Comanche political history is marked by a fluidity of organization. Pre-reservation Comanche economy was focused on the products, animal, and vegetal of the Great Plains. While the later were harvested primarily for domestic use, the former provided meat, tallow, and hides, which could be traded for other necessities. Later, those products included the animals themselves in the form of horses and cattle, which were traded both east and west. However, Comanches did not actively raise those animals, but obtained them in raids into Texas and Mexico. During the Civil War, the Union Army in New Mexico encouraged those raids. Indeed, the Army's own beef contractor was often in Comanche camps to arrange purchases. During the reservation period, government policy was aimed at trying to make farmers out of the individual Comanches. This generally failed. There was slightly better luck at encouraging horse and cattle raising, but again with minimal success. The agents managed the leasing of reservation lands initially to Texas cattlemen and after allotment to individual farmers. Oil and natural gas leases from the bed of the Red River provided some tribal income in the 1930s, and in the 1970s and 1980s, some individuals became wealthy from these leases on their allotment. Following the legalization of Indian gaming in the 1990s, a casino was opened at the tribal headquarters in Lawton. By the 21st century, proceeds were funding numerous tribal initiatives. Traditional Comanche lawways distinguish between the private and domestic sphere and the public sphere. Domestic affairs include berry picking, hide tanning, and specifics of trade, marriage arrangements, including divorce, nanawoku, damages for adultery, and even murder were private matters. In the event the private and domestic became public and political, as when a nanawoku feud began with a refusal to pay damages or in retaliation for damages taken, the chief usually stepped in and tried his best to quiet things down. Communal hunting, intertribal trade, and peacemaking were public and community matters, subject to discussion and debate at informal gatherings called smoke lodges, and more at formal councils. Various Comanche groups made treaties with Spanish, Mexican, United States, and Confederate groups. Of those, the most important was the 1867 Treaty of Medicine Creek Lodge, which laid the foundations for the Comanche relations with the federal government. For the next half century and beyond, the Comanche signers, mostly Yampakayas, agreed to a joint reservation in western Oklahoma and to the political confederation with the Kiowa and Plains Apache, the present Apache tribe of Oklahoma. This confederation became known as KCA. A joint KCA tribal business committee was established, although never fully formalized in the late 1890s. After allotment, because there was no longer any tribal assets, the KCA was inactive between 1917 and 1922. The KCA was never a strong organization, and in the 1930s, several joint KCA and two separate Kiowa Comanche Apache constitutions were composed both within and outside the provisions of the Oklahoma Indian Welfare Act. The Bureau of Indian Affairs did not specifically accept any of them. In the early 1960s, a group of Comanches managed to gain a control of KCA business meetings and declared that the Comanche tribe was a separate organization. Although initially rejected, the BIA, a tribal constitution, was drafted and accepted by the Comanche voters in 1966. Traditional Comanche religion was a personal matter, although there were common cultural elements. Personal power, puha, could be obtained from the spirit world and could be shared with a small group for others. The two broad kinds of power were protection in war and curing. The later was accomplished by knowledge of herbal cures. There were few large-scale religious ceremonies, again related to group curing, well-being, and foretelling. Some herbal knowledge has been maintained. Comanches probably learned about peyote circa 1800 as they moved into southern Texas and northern Mexico. It was first used as war foretelling medicine in the late 1880s and the early 1890s. A small group of Liapan Apaches who moved from New Mexico to Oklahoma and brought a new peyote ritual to the Comanches. Initially suppressed by the federal government, it was formally incorporated as the Native American Church in 1918. Under President Ulysses S. Grant's peace policy, the Society of Friends, the Quakers, were assigned as agents to the Kiowa Comanche Apache Reservation. They made little headway. In the 1890s, Roman Catholic, Episcopal, Baptist, and Mennonite missions were established. Although of the missionaries were white, from the 1890s, Comanches served as deacons, preachers, and ministers. Hymns were composed in the Comanche language using Comanche musical forms or adapting European melodies to the Comanche. In the 1880s, Comanches were among the students at the Hampton Institute and Carlisle Industrial Boarding Schools in Virginia and Pennsylvania. Although relatively few attended those schools, a total of 58 Comanches attended Carlisle. Attendance at Fort Sill Indian School in Lawton and at Riverside in Anadarko was more common as of late. After closing, the former Comanches having attended the local public schools, in recent years, Comanches have attained advanced degrees and in many fields of law, education, and divinity. Although the Comanche language was once spoken across the Southern Plains and sometimes called the court language of the plains due to its wide use, the number of speakers has declined. There are two Comanche language dictionaries in print, Numu Tepapuku Namentikatu, and the Comanche Language and Cultural Preservation Committee has worked to reestablish the knowledge of the language. Through many numerous primers, several Comanche languages, story texts, a hymnal has been published. The preservation Comanches have never held exclusive membership policy. Many trace their ancestry to Arapahoes, Crows, Shoshones, and even Hopis and other pueblos. From the early 18th century, Spaniards, Mexicans, and later Anglo-Americans and German Texans were captured and adopted into Comanche families. However, the claim that fewer than 10% of the Comanches alive in the 1930s could be called full blood is probably an exaggeration. That was written by Thomas Cavanaugh.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they have a long bloody history. And then yeah, I remember reading something about how they split off from the Shoshone like a long time ago.
Well, it makes sense. Like, and it also makes sense with the horse.
The horse culture with those groups and Nez Perce, Shoshone, and Comanche were like I call them the big three horse kind of ones, right?
They were the traders. I mean, that's why Lewis and Clark knew when they got to Montana that they were going to have to trade with the Shoshone for
Mhm.
horses. They knew that's why Sacagawea exists, is because they were sitting in North Dakota and they said, when we get to the mountains, we need horses. And
Right.
that's the other thing that's not taught about in our history books is like
Oh,
they knew they were going to hit the mountains. They knew they were going to need horses.
right.
And
Like
that's why they got a Shoshone lady to speak the
they're
language.
they're planning ahead there big time.
Yeah, it was a military mission. People forget
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. I have some photos and or a few maps to show. I think it'd be a good time touching on the Quanah Parker
Yeah.
bit, which I know we have a video for too. But I'll go ahead and
After you'll show these photos, and we'll jump into the video.
yeah, yeah, that sounds good. Let me Let me share here. So you see that?
Um, I do.
So I found a really good um it has a little bit of history. Your Oklahoma one was a good summary, but this Texas State Historical Association had some good photos, I thought.
Oh,
And
I think
they
that's a good.
focus on Quanah Parker, which when people think of the Comanche, that's their sitting bull, so to speak.
Oh, exactly.
Right. So the last chief of the Quahada Comanche Indians. So there he is. He is and I'll get down to some more here. There's maybe like no more than 10 photos. So this is his mother, Cynthia Ann Parker. So a lot of people don't know is his mom was a white captive, which is interesting that he was a war chief and he was mixed heritage to me. Uh, but that's him with his mother. This was like a portrait. Someone did a famous portrait.
Yeah.
Um, I know you also had a map with the raid
Right.
routes more so. This one's just a very simple, shows you their ancestral kind of land. Obviously, Texas is most of it. You got like kind of like western half of Oklahoma, a little bit of Kansas, a little bit of Colorado, and then like eastern third of New Mexico in that. But like Zach's map will show in a little while here, it'll show the routes down into Mexico where they raided and spent a lot of time. Um,
You want me to bring those up?
let me. I got a couple more, and then
All right.
yeah, we'll just finish this off. That's just the Medicine Lodge Treaty Council, which it says Quanah Parker refused to attend that one. But the other Comanche groups, like you were saying, they came, right? It's in and I compare Quanah Parker to Sitting Bull because he held out to the end, right? Like he was,
Right.
whereas the other chiefs are like Red Cloud for Pine Ridge, right? He went and was like, no, we need to like have some land or something.
Well, I think that's part of these chiefs in the sense that like people don't understand with these treaties too is some of these guys said, "Fuck no, we're not signing them.
Yeah,
We're not a part of that." And the US government didn't recognize the different bands or the different regional governments in that sense or those leaders in that way. They just said, "Oh, you guys are all Comanches because you're in this area."
right,
You know what I mean? Like in
right.
reality, like each tribe is essentially its own band.
Exactly.
So
Exactly. And you mentioned, which we could do a whole episode on, you mentioned peyote briefly. There's a lot of tie-in with Quanah Parker and American Indian Church. That's a whole other.
American Indian Church should be an episode. Yeah, I think that'll be a good
Yeah.
episode we do.
We don't need to show the white general here. It's just here's another guy. There's another map below. I'm going to show Isatai with the White Eagle was his name. Just another. Here we go. So
Hmm.
this is your modern day Oklahoma territory. The white in the middle is where like Oklahoma City and Tulsa are.
Right,
Right. And then you can see down the southwest here, Kiowa Comanche, and then Geronimo's band of Apache was also put there too,
right.
Fort Sill, Oklahoma. So yeah, here in the southwest part, and you can see all these other, obviously there's a lot of tribes in Oklahoma that were put there. Way up here, you got where are they at? Where are they at? Are they on here? Modoc, little
Yeah,
Modoc from Oregon,
that's
got
wild.
little tiny little square there. And I think that might have been that's Quanah Parker when he's older, aged a bit. Uh, yeah, I think that might have been it for the photos I wanted to. There's just like the Santa Fe with the railroad. Oh, this one's a famous one too. Him with his two wives when they were living in a modern house.
Two wives. Look at that.
He had more than that. There's a quote from him somewhere. That's his grave site. He's buried. Where's it doesn't say where. I'm assuming in Oklahoma somewhere. There's a quote by him. that said he won't give up three things when they started living like in houses. I won't give up my peyote, my multiple wives, and my white man clothes.
Yeah, funny, what a guy.
What? Yeah, quite a character for sure.
But I mean, but listen, he said what? So he was for modern clothes.
He liked the hats and the clothes, I guess.
But
Obviously he was still very Comanche, but
but see, I like that in the sense that he's okay. What that shows me is he's okay with innovation. He understands that we're going to have this back and forth, this like oh, I mean, like I'm trying to think how to say it. Like we're going to advance. He understands that. We're going to live in harmony with the white man.
right.
I like putting this shirt on. They figured it out. They figured out the technology. I get it. I'm an indigenous man. We don't have to wear buffalo forever. I hate that argument when you talk to some like European people or non-native people, and they're like, "Well, if you're really native, shouldn't you be living in teepees still?"
Oh, yeah, yeah,
And it's like, well, no. Shouldn't you still be living in a cobblestone home
yeah.
or a wood barn? No.
Right,
We
right,
adapt. We as human society, humans adapt worldwide. But
right.
there's a reason you go over to Europe or China and the cars look different
Yeah,
because we don't, yes, it's the same technology, it's different, and you'll see that with natives and how they dress or their clothes or the little things they do.
right,
But it's okay to take the technologies and adapt as a society. And I think that's going forward with AI too. I mean, you and I have talked about that and how it's a tool. It can be used for good
right,
or bad. We played that song.
right, right.
But
No, absolutely. But
I
yeah,
I think we'll get into your video, which talks about Kawana Parker, and it's a really good video. And it is by
little TED Talk there is what that was.
yes,
Yeah,
and it's a lesson by Dustin Tamahakura, directed by
yeah,
Thomas Piscardo Espaillat. Man, those are hard names.
yeah.
If you go to YouTube, it's The Last Chief of the Comanches in a Fall of an Empire. And we will play that for you starting now.
Late one night in 1871, a group of riders descended on a sleeping army camp. In minutes, they stirred the camp into a panic, stole about 70 horses, and disappeared. Led by a young chief named Quanah Parker, the raid was the latest in a long series of altercations along the Texas frontier between the indigenous people known as the Numana, or Comanches, and the United States forces sent to steal Comanche lands for white settlers. Though the conflict was decades old, U.S. Colonel Ranald McKenzie led the latest iteration. From summer to winter, he tracked Quanah, but Quanah was also tracking him. And each time the colonel drew near his targets, they disappeared without a trace into the vast plains. The Comanches had controlled this territory for nearly 200 years, hunting buffalo and moving whole villages around the plains. They suppressed Spanish and Mexican attacks from the south, attempts to settle the land by the United States from the east, and numerous other indigenous peoples' bids for power. The Comanche Empire was not one unified group under central control, but rather a number of bands, each with its own leaders. What all of these bands had in common was their prowess as riders. Every man, woman, and child was adept on horseback. Their combat skills on horseback far surpassed those of both other indigenous peoples and colonists, allowing them to control an enormous area with relatively few people, probably about 40,000 at their peak, and only about 4,000 to 5,000 by the time Quanah Parker and Ranald McKenzie faced off. Born around 1848, Quanah was the eldest child of Peta Nakona, a leader of the Nokani Band, and Cynthia Ann Parker, a kidnapped white settler who assimilated with the Comanches and took the name Nadua. When Quanah was a preteen, U.S. forces ambushed his village, capturing his mother and sister. Quanah and his younger brother sought refuge with a different Comanche band, the Quahada. In the years that followed, Quanah proved himself as a warrior and leader. In his early 20s, he and a young woman named Wekia eloped, enraging her powerful father and several other leaders. They stayed on the run for a year, attracting followers and establishing Quanah as a Paraivo, or chief, at an exceptionally young age. Under his leadership, the Quahada Band was able to elude the U.S. military and continue their way of life. But in the early 1870s, the East Coast market for buffalo hides became lucrative, and hunters slaughtered millions of buffalo in just a few years. Meanwhile, U.S. forces led a surprise attack, killing nearly all the Quahada Band's 1,400 horses and stealing the rest. Though he had vowed to never surrender, Quanah knew that without bison or horses, the Comanches faced certain starvation in winter. So, in 1875, Quanah and the Quahada Band moved to the Fort Sill Reservation in Oklahoma. As hunter-gatherers, they could not transition easily to an agricultural way of life on the reservation. The U.S. government had promised rations and supplies, but what they provided was wildly insufficient. Quanah, meanwhile, was suddenly in a weak political position. He had no wealth or power compared to others who had been on the reservation longer. Still, he saw an opportunity. The reservation included ample grasslands, useless to the Comanches, but perfect for cattle ranchers to graze their herds. He began a profitable arrangement, leasing the land to cattle ranchers quietly at first. Eventually, he negotiated leasing rights with the U.S. government, which ensured a steady source of income for the Comanches on the reservation. As Quanah's status on the reservation and recognition from government officials grew, he secured better rations, advocated for the construction of schools and houses, and became one of 3 tribal judges on the reservation court. Tired of speaking with multiple leaders, the U.S. government wanted to appoint one chief of all Comanches, a role that hadn't existed outside the reservation. Still, many Comanches supported Quanah for this role, just as several older leaders had supported him to lead them against the U.S. armed forces. Even Quanah's former adversary, Ranald McKenzie, advocated for his appointment. Quanah acted in Hollywood movies and befriended American politicians, riding in Theodore Roosevelt's inauguration parade. Still, he never cut his long braids and advocated for the Native American church and the use of peyote. He began to go by Quanah Parker, adopting his mother's surname, and tried to track down his mother and sister, eventually learning they had both died shortly after their capture. Quanah adapted again and again to different worlds, different roles, and circumstances that would seem insurmountable to most. Though he wasn't without critics, after Quanah's passing, Comanches began using the term chairman to designate the top elected official in the tribe, recognizing him as the last chief of the Comanches and a model of cultural survival and adaptation. In that spirit, today's Comanche nation looks towards the future with over 16,000 enrolled citizens and countless descendants. For another story of horse-riding warriors, get to know the Amazons. Who were these seemingly mythical, formidable fighters, and how do we know if they really existed? Find out with this video.
And that was a really good video, Matt. I watched that before we did the podcast earlier today, and I was like, wow, I didn't realize Quanah Parker was about that and kind of what they did and
Right.
how the Comanche Nation was. It's kind of, in a sense, to me, hearing their history, it's a lot of natives that held out too.
Yeah.
They were
Yeah.
looking for the better opportunities, knowing that one day these better opportunities would come and come to them. And that's what I mean. A lot of tribes find themselves in those situations.
Right. No, they're in the panhandle of Texas. I believe it's near Lubbock, Texas, is this place called Palo Duro Canyon. And it's a random, it looks like a canyon that should be in Arizona or New Mexico, but it's out into the like kind of plains more. And they hid in this canyon. Like I thought about the Modoc in the lava beds in Southern Oregon, how they hid like in these kind of like stronghold areas, basically, you know? So
Oh, exactly. I totally get what you're saying. And that's like my grandpa. I mean, his dad was born in a canyon hiding from the Canadian Mounties in Bab, Montana. You know what I
right,
mean? Like,
using the land and its natural geography to like be protected, you know?
exactly, exactly.
This is a
Here's
very
some of the maps that I found. You know, we like talk about maps here on the podcast. This one is in Comanche. This map is in Comanche.
oh
Uh,
wow.
what it shows is in the 1700s and the 1786, the New Mexico Treaty, and then they show the darker areas as they're kind of the raiding zones and where they would go into Mexico and up into Texas. You know, here's the Rio Grande River, there's Albuquerque, the Rio Grande River, El Paso. That's the bend in it all the way down.
Wow, they went deep down to Guadalajara and like that's into Mexico ways.
Oh yeah,
Like
no,
they went down there.
it really looks like they ran that middle section of Texas, Mexico, the desert. And you
Mhm.
can do that on a horse.
Yeah,
And this is happening the 1700s to the 1840s. You know what I mean? They think about that time frame of what is going on in Mexico, Texas. 1860s was Civil War, right? So all those different nations running that, and they're coming there out of Texas going north. And they have the different bands too, right? You have the different
yeah.
bands of that. Um, Here's another one that shows kind of where same thing, but showing the trade centers. You
Oh,
know, you had Taos was a trade center. You had um just the areas
um,
in
Eastern Texas.
exactly, and that's
Actually, that one yellow dot, that middle one looks like about where Dallas and Fort Worth is right
yep,
there.
yep. I think
Today,
that's
right?
exactly where they are. Yes, because there's
Yeah,
San Antonio right there,
San
Dallas,
Antonio.
and
Yeah.
the north there would have been
Oh, maybe
right
that's
on,
Oklahoma City area or somewhere like
right on
that.
the Red River there.
Oh, that's on the state line then.
Yeah, so right there, but
Yeah.
it's a river. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? It's a big river. Here's another one that shows kind of the Comanche raiding trails into Mexico and up into Oklahoma, Panhandle, and into Colorado there. There's the Comanche Spring, the Big Spring. That's kind of where, you know, if you think about that.
Well, and their villages up north, their main villages, that one that's in the panhandle of Texas, that's by that Palo Duro Canyon,
Yep.
right about where that is.
No, they were warriors, man, in that sense. People feared the Comanche. Um, Here's kind of another, you know, as it looks like as it was starting, here's Fort Sill and Lawton on there. You know, it
Yeah.
shows kind of where they're at. The different, you know, towns at the time, the forts, Fort Griffin, Fort Parker's Fort, uh, Santa Fe is on the map, El Paso's on the map, right? They're building these cities, these towns in this area. Here's one with the Spanish missions in the 17th, 18th century. So you also hear where we are in Texas, that lower part of Texas, like you
Yeah.
have all these missions here. You have the trail, and like that's Spanish Texas into Louisiana there. Like there's the Apache, Comanche up north, but again, these are all the people you're dealing with.
The missions too, it's there's some commonality with California in that sense.
Yep. And
These-
people forget, they often forget about the Spanish and French influence in like Texas and Louisiana. I mean,
Yeah,
you see it more in New Orleans and Louisiana, but they forget about it over in Texas too, because it happened there.
right.
I think that, and then I wanted to, so then,
Oh, the forts.
okay, this is of the Red River War. Here's the U.S. military forts. Well, right there is where they ended up in Oklahoma. Look at all these people around them. Fort
Wow.
Dodge, Fort Union, Fort Sill, Fort Richardson, Fort Concho. And again, like we talk about, is I laugh. It's like you're not peacefully taking the West if you're building forts.
No,
A fort is a military base.
that's 100%. No, I appreciate you brought up just it makes sense that you we had to bring up more maps for them because of how many groups were in one place here. Like there's a lot going on here during this time period.
Well, here's another one: Fort Bliss, Fort Lincoln, Fort Ing, Fort
Yeah,
Duncan, Fort Ewell, Fort McIntosh, Fort Merrill, Fort Polk, Fort right there.
right.
Look at there's Texas getting built. There's Dallas. There's Fort Worth. There's Austin. There's San Antonio. There's Houston. Right. There's all those places. And oh,
That's all of it. I want to point out here too, if you look at, so you got the Kiowa, you got the Lipon Apache right
yep.
there. They're an unrecognized tribe. A lot of people don't realize that Mescaleros there, they got pushed up a little bit in their mountains there by where they were.
Oh yeah.
But the Lipon, there's groups of them in Texas still today. They're still around. You know,
Right.
they're yeah, they're just not recognized.
No, that's crazy, man. No, it's I definitely like pulling up those maps, looking at kind of the area, looking at the stuff, but we are kind of running on the end of the podcast here. We've talked a long time today. Is there anything you before we kind of get into final words, any final stories or anything you want to
Just
say?
one last thing, and you brought this up. It says here that during World War II, there were 17 Comanche men used their native language for code
Yes.
in warfare. So Comanches were also one of those that sent some men.
Well, and I saw where there was a guy, um, uh, his name was I Charles Chibity. He died in 2005. He was a
Oh,
code breaker and he helped turn the tide of the war. He's famous,
oh
uh,
wow.
famous one. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really yeah. That people
We'll,
forget. They always
we'll,
think
we'll
Navajo.
have to do just like a Code Talker podcast and all just focus on every, not just Navajo,
Yeah.
every tribe that had some, at least one code talker.
I mean, that's the nice thing about the movies, right? Is like when you get a movie like that, that Code Talkers, that it's a great movie
Right.
that highlights, the Navajo and what they're doing. Like that to me is really good. But it hurts those other tribes that were also doing it. And that was the unique thing about having the tribes. And like that's what like that made us beautiful in a way too, is like the fact that like no, we had people that were wanting to fight for that freedom that were native that said, no, you can use our language. We'll use our language to help, and the Germans couldn't break it. That was the best part. I think nowadays they probably could with all the AI tools, all the but that's a whole
But with no written languages, like they're not written either. So like, what do
yeah,
you, if you're Russia or so, I don't know, just thrown out, like you're not going to find a book on this language anywhere. I mean, now you might, but
yeah.
yeah, back then you wouldn't.
No, exactly. One last story before we get in our final words, and it's kind of a story about how the slaughter of 31 million buffalo between 1868 and
Oh,
1881 contributed to the downfall of the Comanches. Their lives were really built on two things, really. It was war and buffalo. All of the Plains Indians, once they got a horse from the Spanish, buffalo hunting became easier for them. It was their way of life. The buffalo hunting began as a simple market exercise. Hunters figured out they could get $3.50 a hide. Then they figured out they could ship these hides east on the new railroads, and they also figured out that the buffaloes were not smart enough to realize that if a buffalo next to the buffalo dropped, then there was something wrong. The buffalo had to see the source of danger. So you'd had these people who would kill 3,500 buffalo in 28 days. It occurred to the generals in the West, specifically Philip Sheridan and William Sherman, that by allowing the buffaloes to be destroyed, they're creating the most efficient way to destroy the Indians. And Sheridan had a famous quote. He said, "You kill the buffalo, you destroy the Indians' commissary." So it became a political at the end. Yes, let's kill all the buffaloes, and then it's the end of the Plains Indians because there's no Plains Indian without buffalo. So on that note, man, any final words?
I think that was a good point to end right there. I mean, you could argue that Comanche were the southernmost plains people, right? TB
Right.
Buffalo culture. And just every plains tribe has that. Like we can't, it's so unison with the buffalo, right?
Right. Well, and it's definitely one of those things that like it those 200 buffalo that went into Yellowstone.
Yeah.
save themselves. You know what I mean? Now look at the buffalo herds. Now look at what the tribes are doing, right?
They're coming back.
Exactly.
They're
And
coming.
just like us native people, we're coming back and we're still here. We're still doing podcasts. We're innovating. We're doing things.
Yeah,
But with that, Matt, any final words?
I think that was it, my man. Just
Yeah.
just another podcast, another tribe in the books, and we'll see. Maybe we get onto an interview next, huh?
Yeah, no, let's see who we could drum up. But I just want to thank the listeners again for listening to another podcast. You know, we're in season 4 now, which has been great. We've been doing this, across multiple states on Zoom here and there, up and over everywhere, learning about tribes, learning about treaties, talking to people in Indian country. And always, we want to thank you guys for listening. And until next time. Bye-bye.
I know riders from the east. I know educated natives down to picket in the streets. Middle fingers to police. Fuck you, we come in peace. I know red-skinned hippies that be giving me the creeps. I know beauty, I know beach. I know savages and freaks. And I know a couple cousins even bougier than me. No, ain't elite. Bougie native, yes indeed. Art exhibit to the club. And we roll it 20 deep. Copper on my neck, gold on my ring. Feather on my hat, skin stitched chin. 100 warriors on my back, daily drumming when I sing. Man, there ain't no way around it.
A Native Podcast is produced by G&G Advertising and Quartz Lake Productions.